Hell of a thing. We have an update. Cop involved in a brutal arrest of a black man is still on the force, but the charges have been dropped. We first brought you this on Indisputable. Let me remind you, here it is.
Is this your property?
Go, man.
Is this your property?
Big fat boy. Go, man.
Is this your property?
Go, man.
Nope.
It's gonna be my property. How you doing, bro? You must be stupid. What's going on, man? What's up? Help! 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 You wanna get big? Go! I'm not doing nothing! I'm not doing anything! Ow! Come on, stop, man! Stop! Stop!
I ain't got no courage.
We're resisting! Get him! We're resisting!
Bro, I give up. Come on, man.
I got no courage.
Yes, I live here. This is my home, man. Come on, bro.
Lay down.
Come on, bro. Come on, man. I live here.
Get down.
I'm trying.
Take me to the grass.
We got it.
I'm down, bro. I'm down. I'm down.
All right, hands.
I'm down.
You remember that story? Remember the cops saying, bite them, get them. Completely against protocol. They're trained not to encourage that kind of vicious behavior from their K-9. As a matter of fact, many question the use of K-9s, period, in law enforcement. So do I. Put up the picture full mass. I'm going to give you the background and the update. Mr. Marvin Long. Mr. Marvin was at home. He was illegally arrested, illegally brutalized, and illegally mauled by a K-9 under order from a cop. Members of the Sheffield Police Department in Sheffield, Alabama. This took place in 2021. If you recall, Mr. Long was charged with 2 misdemeanors, resisting arrest and obstruction, which are commonly known as contempt of cop charges, used by cops to punish citizens who may question their authority, which is protected by the First Amendment. On Tuesday, Carver County District Judge Mitchell Hayes dismissed the resisting arrest charge almost 4 years after the violent arrest that still affects man today. But none of the officers, none of the deputies involved from the Sheffield Police Department and the Colbert County Sheriff's Office were ever disciplined, much less criminally charged. Long's attorney, a good friend of mine personally and an advocate for justice, Mr. Harry Daniels, provided background on the arrest. Quote, on the day in question, Mr. Long was in his home when he noticed a police car in the road. Being a concerned neighbor, he went outside to see what was going on. He stood by a marked police car that was blocking the road while he observed the police execute a search warrant on a house down the street. Subsequently, the police emerged from his neighbor's house from down the street with 2 individuals in custody. Harry Daniels goes on to say, the police approach the marked police car that was blocking the roadway with the 2 individuals. Upon approach, one officer told Mr. Long that he could leave and to get away from his car. Mr. Long adhered to the lawful order and moved away from the marked vehicle. Mr. Long and the officer exchanged profanity to one another, freedom of speech here. Mr. Long walked back to his house and was on his porch when the officers decided to approach him. The video speaks for itself. of what happened next, end quote from attorney Harry Daniel, civil rights attorney at law. Now, what does it seem like so far? Without you having the video of those interactions, seems as if the police simply wanted to put the black male in his place. How dare you question our being in your neighborhood, blocking roadways and conducting perhaps illegal activity? How dare you question us? Well, he's a tax-paying citizen. He has freedom of speech, constitutional rights are intact. He has a right to ask a question. He also has a right to utilize profanity, like it or not, it's freedom of speech as well. For you all to be so bad and big and tough, you all sure are triggered by very simple things. There's more. So Risner then ordered his police dog to attack Mr. Long, evidently taking sadistic pleasure in hearing Mr. Long cry out in pain. Mr. Long was bitten by the police K-9 on the same leg that he had surgery on to replace his bones with rods. This is in the lawsuit. Mr. Long was then placed in handcuffs afterwards. At this point, Mr. Long needed medical attention from the dog bite and from the attack from the defendants. However, defendants took Mr. Long to jail for booking rather than to the hospital. Mr. Long went to Shoals Hospital later and North Alabama Medical Center later because of the dog bite on his left leg, a knot on his head, and back pains. Quote, as a result of the assault, Mr. Long sustained physical injuries and permanent scarring to his body, the lawsuit states. Additionally, Mr. Long also suffered emotional injuries and damages as a result of the defendant's unlawful and unconstitutional acts. Remember, cause and effect is important. What was he doing at the time of their encounter? When they approached him, he was at home. He was on private property. He had the right to remain silent. He did not have to identify a damn thing. Some would say, oh, wait a minute, Alabama is a stop and identify state. This is correct. It only applies to public or publicly accessible property. It does not apply to private property. There's more. Meanwhile, a civil lawsuit filed against the cops from both agencies in 2023 remains pending. Listed as defendants in the lawsuit are Sheffield police officers Darian Fountain and Brett Evans, as well as former Sheffield police officer Max Dotson, Nick Risner, the cop who sicked the dog on him, is not listed because he was killed a year before the lawsuit was filed. Also listed as defendants are Colbert County Sheriff's deputies, Mr. Tommy Mills, Bradley Skipworth, Tim Vanderford, Curtis Burns, Daniel Cruz, Tyler Evans, and Jonathan Harkins. Dotson, who was fired in 2023 after his initial conviction for assaulting a different black man, only for him to appeal the conviction and then get convicted again by a circuit court judge in 2024. He was sentenced to time served and given a $25 fine. This past December, Sheffield Police Chief Ricky Terry retired. You see, good Ricky here, officer not friendly, has served as the Sheffield Police Chief for 6.5 years. What do you have here? You have a culture of corruption, a culture. Infraction after infraction, protection after protection. And then it takes years for an ounce of justice to be served. We're talking about charges being dropped. They never should have been applied in the first place. And if we're going to talk about charges, why is it that these cops have not been criminally charged for what they did? everyone clearly can see what happened. And then attorneys like Harry Daniels are few in this country, one of the few, willing to take cases like this, willing to fight for years in order to get justice for their client. Benjamin Crump is another. Sometimes the only way these cases get any level of justice is because of the civil rights attorneys who are willing to represent the victims in civil court. And believe me, their representation matters, because if it had not been for a civil rights attorney working to advocate for this black male, you may not get any charge dropped at all. But here we are. Dear brother, I am reporting on so many of these cases now where clearly there's a criminal offense by way of law enforcement, but now all of a sudden, all of these cases are getting dropped. And I can't help but to submit that this has something to do with the narrative of white supremacy and the election of Donald Trump. What say you?
Oh, absolutely. Since Donald Trump's been elected, even outside of things like law enforcement, you see companies like Target, Walmart, Amazon getting rid of all their DEI programs, slashing their efforts to work with minority businesses of various sorts. Donald Trump, pretty much guaranteeing that police can get away with things because that's part of the platform, on top of everything else that he stands for.